Such epic, super epic. I love it. What's up, Paul?
The elevator music we had going too got everyone going, I think. Well, at least it got me going. Welcome. Hi. Hi, Ian.
Hi, Paul. How's it going, buddy?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Always, always. Well, welcome in everybody to another ZBrush stream for 2023 covering Redshift and all the really good fun stuff. We have Mr. Paul Gaboury here to cover hard surface tips and tricks within 2023 and also to answer any questions about the new version of ZBrush you guys might have. There's a lot of fun stuff, and we'll also tease a little something towards the end too. So yeah, Paul, you know, I don't want to keep them waiting too much.
No?
No. I used to be the person in the chat was like, please just hurry up. Let's go. So
yeah.
Toss it to you.
So I'm hoping to show some couple things that I like to do, finalizing something hard surface and some things inside of ZBrush, as well as cover what I've been doing with Redshift for some of my hard surface elements and items. So we're going to start with something that's not mine. Some of you might be familiar with this. Pitch Dev Studios provided this for me. Mr. David Levy and Yariv Newman, thank you for providing this model. For those that may not know what this is from the movie Finch on Apple TV Plus with Tom Hanks. So this is the main robot named Jeff. So the team there, we're experimenting with Redshift in ZBrush to see what kind of renders, because for them, obviously, it's really important. They are a pitch studio, right? So they're working with clients and getting pitches amongst many other things. So I just wanted to start with this because it's obviously very hard surface. It's got some organic things, and I want to share a couple little tricks also that I like to do, and we'll carry it over to another one of my models. So I'm just going to quickly just first render this out real quick and show you what how fast you can render, because the one point I want to actually also make with this model, if you're not aware, ZBrush is now 2023 is compatible with the new Mac silicone processors, so the M1s and the M2s. So I am currently on an M1 right now. So we thought it'd be fun to do a stream in this Mac to show you all what is capable with the Mac systems. If you have one of those, they're very impressive, very powerful. So this is an M1 that I'm on right now. So you can see how fast that rendered. That only took 19 seconds to render this whole model. So beautiful piece. This is what they use, for in the mood. We'll get a little bit closer. Don't be shy, and then re-render, so you all can see that and see what's happening. So this is your GI kicking in right now, specifically if you're using point cloud, and then now it's going through and rendering out. I like to use buckets. I like to only use progressive rendering for me when I'm experimenting, and I will show that a little bit today, how I like to switch between the two. And I'm going to highlight a couple other things I like to change. I feel like rendering is it's like the turning system. If you've ever watched you know what I'm talking about from World War II. The guy that invented that whole thing with all the knobs, and he figured out and actually figured out the code. And I'm like, that's what rendering is to me. It's like pull a lever, render, pull a lever, render, right? And you're doing a lot of experiments to try and get to an end result. So I want to show also a couple things I like to do. So this one thing that would be, when I'm starting out, I'll talk about progressive rendering. But before we get into that, there is some other stuff that I like to do. I'm going to use this guy first, and then I'll pull up something else of mine. So I want to use this head. Okay, so here we'll go to our subtools so you can see the list of things here that I have. So I have the head down here. Let's make the count be a little bit bigger.
And what movie was this robot from again?
Finch. It's on Apple TV Plus. It was starring Tom Hanks. It's literally just Tom Hanks and two robots the entire movie. It's like an apocalypse movie. So he makes this robot. He makes this robot called Jeff.
I'm interested to see. I gotta watch it because I'm interested to see what Jeff looks like. But I mean, he looks awesome. Got all looks like made in ZBrush, which is always such a cool thing to see hard surface in ZBrush, because we get asked that a lot too. Like, hey, can you do hard surface in ZBrush? It's like, yeah. Yep. And that's also too what's fun about this stream, since you specialize in hard surface. So
well, I try. I tried. Let's use the word loosely. I tried. Okay. Yes, someone's asking a question. Yes, this is the full Redshift. This is CPU and GPU. I'm using a full license of Redshift on my Mac right now. So yeah, I'm using the GPU of I have a Mac Studio is what I'm using right now. But we've been using also the notebooks as well, and it flies. So we're always streaming on PC computers. I thought, you know what, I'm going to stream on the Mac, show you guys.
Yeah, mix it up.
And make this all happen also on the Mac. Okay,
100%.
so there is no try.
That's right, John. There is no try. Paul does it. He's just modest. He's a humble guy.
All right. I don't think so. Okay, so this I'm going to look at, say, just this piece right here. Here's something that I kind of like to do with some of my hard surface models, especially now that I have Redshift at my disposal to do things with. Here's something that I like to do that I think sometimes doesn't get played enough with is all the masking options. Like, I don't even know what we're at now with the masking algorithms. I think we're at like 12. I don't even know anymore. I should probably count these and see where we're at. Okay. So this is one thing that I like, especially for something for hard surface. This is something I like to do. So this is sitting around 50,000. So I'm going to just divide this up a little bit. We'll go to 3 million. Fine. So that you guys can see this piece. We're just going to look at just this for now so you can see what's going on. This particular piece, Yariv has already set everything up. He's got materials he's selected that are Redshift materials, again, that he's using here. And then all the coloring and painting. I didn't do any of that. That was all him on his side, setting all this up for us. So one thing that I think is extremely fun to use, and I'm going to show this on another example too, is this mask by smoothness. I think this is a sneaky secret. I don't think it's a, let me rephrase, it's not a secret, but it's a sneaky masking option that I use a ton, not even just for hard surface, but also in organic stuff to get some really cool blotching mask types. But for hard surface, it's really cool. So I'm just going to, let's zoom in a little bit here. And for the sake of just for you guys visually being able to see everything, I'm going to turn off all the paint and let's just switch to a different material. Let's just pick something kind of more general that you can see what's going on here, because I want you guys to be able to visualize this. So I'm going to hit mask by smoothness, right? So this is, I'm sure some of you might start seeing this as maybe being a curvature map in essence. So this is looking at the smoothness of the model and finding where edges are. And you can see I'm getting a mask there on the edging right there, right? And then it's finding other parts of the model, okay, that has some other things going on. And you can see the model's got, I'm going to turn off the floor. It's got a little bit of, you know, some little bit of different types of information happening through there. So this for me is something that becomes really fun to use. All right. So as an example, you have a range, you have a fall off. That's it. It's two things. So in essence, let's crank the range up. Let's go a little crazy. Mask by smoothness. So you can see what that does. There's what your range did. Okay. And then your fall off, let's crank that up. You know, let's go all the way to 500 because I feel excited today. There. Right. So you can see both of these sliders in essence is growing the mask in a way. It's the range is finding the range of where to go and calculate out, and then the fall off is controlling how big of a fall off do you want in that range. So I've said just give me a max range. So in essence, look at the fall off kind of as like a blurring of where does it see the normal change in the surface smoothness to where it's churning to, right? The normal's going the other direction because that's what it's trying to find. It's trying to find the change in these edges that are happening. Okay, so I'm just super extreme right now, right? So if we really drop this, let's put this at 50 and I'll keep the other one at 500. Okay, and then you can see the differences you start to make. And then now let's say, okay, let's not go too crazy now. Let's start dropping them both a little bit lower and get something a little bit more like that, right? So we're getting masking, and so we'll inverse it so you can really see what you're doing here. Okay, and what I like to add to this is something that's also newer to ZBrush. This is where I really like to use the boost masking and the dilute masking. This is where I find these extremely useful, right? So I can dilute this, and diluting is telling ZBrush, hey, only the pixels, right? So if we flip this, only the pixels, or not the pixels, the vertex points that have 100% mask, keep those masked. And anything that's not really at 100% mask, start unmasking it. Okay, so this is very different. There's, in essence, this is what I'm saying. There's just the way you guys can blur your mask, grow a mask, boost, and done. These are 3 different ways of moving your mask around on the surface. And I highly recommend you guys start experimenting with these. There's just so many different ways you can use this. So for me, this makes sense because maybe I just want a little bit of mask, right? So in there, so I start diluting, and you can see if I keep going, there's going to be a point where it stops. And in essence, the original mask, there are all the points that were one. Is this coming through all right for everybody? Do you need me to
looks
magnify this? Right, so you
it
can
looks
see,
like edgeware.
yeah,
Looks
all this in here, right, is what I'm looking for. Okay, so you control that obviously with these. So I prefer that. So if we go back and let's do this mask again, if you guys just hold Control and tap, you're doing a blur. If you hold Control and Alt, you're doing a sharpen. It's a very different, very different algorithm, right? You can see they're different results. So in essence, I was using the shortcuts to do this, right? So if we flip it, you can really see what's on mask now. Okay, so that was me using these 2 buttons, which are the defaults, right? But then you can go back and say, well, let's do a smooth masking, and then you can do a grow, right? So this is growing out the existing mask, and then you can shrink. So the difference between these 2 is this is allowing vertex points that weren't involved in the original mask to be used. That's kind of the difference between these 2. Is this is a blur and a sharpening, and it's allowing points that were not necessarily also in the masking originally, where boost and dilute are like, no, we can only play with the vertex points that were masked. So if we go back again and hit this, and if I start boosting, right, it's just trying to find all the points of interest. I can keep going and going and going and going and going with this, right? So for me, I'll do something like this. Let's go now ahead and turn on our paint again. Okay. Then I would say, well, actually, we'll turn it off so you guys can visually see what I'm doing here. And then I'm going to say, let's use the sharpen. I'm going to use the sharpen instead, not now. Okay. I'm going to sharpen that up and say I want something like that. I'm going to inverse it. Okay. And then now we'll turn this on again. And then I'll come over here into now handy dandy Redshift materials. And I'll say, let's take some aluminum. And then I'm going to say material, color, and then fill the object. And you can see you start getting, and I'll clear my mask now. We'll bring everything back. It's a great way to start adding some like weathering with another material on your surface. So if we do the same thing here, let's do the same thing now with this one. Okay. So let's turn this off so you guys can see this. And let's put it on, again, a material that you visually can see it. We're sitting at around 22,000. So let's go up a little bit more. All right, I'll go to 3.5 million for this. Then I'll say, let's go ahead and mask that off. This is what I got. And then this is where I'm going to sharpen it again. See if I like that. If I don't like that, you know what? I'm going to go with a little bit bigger range again. I'm going to go a little bigger range on this. I'm going to go 50. And then let's see what that, yes. And then I start getting those splotches. And then the beauty part here, everyone, for us, is this is masking, right? So if you don't want this, okay, you just switch to your mask and then start on masking it. Like you can now pick and choose, right, what you don't want mask and what you do want mask. And I'll show on my ship that I'm going to pull up here in a minute. Here are some other things that we can do. Right, hey, now I can inverse that. Go ahead, hit me with it. Hit me with your best.
We got
okay, go.
We got a question. Was there an option to do mask by camera? And could you show it?
Sure. Yeah. Let me just fill this one. Color.
I think a good time since you're talking about masking, all the cool stuff about it.
Yeah. So this is what I like. See, like this, especially now that we have Redshift, which these materials, and we're going to get a little bit into this today, does have PBR-based information and factoring. It's a PBR-based material. You guys have asked for materials like this. You can do this, and I can sculpt with this now and have this material here. And in essence, I'm sculpting now with a Redshift material. This is also one of the big difference of having Redshift inside of ZBrush. We now have the ability to use Redshift materials to even sculpt with. That has changed the way I operate and the way I look at my models. So something like this is I like having this. And then so we'll do another quick render, Shift R. Let's see what that starts to look like. Because obviously I want that GI, which is global illumination, to kick in, right? So that's an important thing for me to be able to have that kick in and start rendering so I can see what all now the factors of the render coming to life for me. And I want to see what that starts to look like, right? With this weathering thing that I start to do. Okay. And I'm going to show you other things. Don't just think about this in a material sense. We're going to think of some other ways too when I bring up another model, right? So this beautiful, just nice render done quickly too. This is what we're talking about. We're sending millions of polygons. There's not even any UVs or anything on this, right? So the total model right now is 9.7 million, sending it off. Okay. And right now for this scene, the lighting is coming from an HDR. All right. And then there's one light in the scene here. So this particular setup has one single light, which I would probably call my key light now. And then you've got an HDR that you can see this HDR is bringing all this information in to light this scene. And that's what is being used to light our scene. So this, it looks really good. I think it looks great. So the question about the camera one, all right. So I think this is a great question. I love that this is being asked. This is why I wanted to spend some time in this menu, our masking world. So you can mask in different ways with inside of ZBrush. And there's more than just looking at it in that sense. There's also normals. Okay, so you can mask by your normals as well. So that's looking for flat surfaces. We'll try to show that. There's peaks and valleys. There is just a lot of ways for us to be able to look at this and then get a mask from it, right? So if I wanted here, we'll turn off again. Let's switch to let's switch to here. This a little bit better. Let's go into our subtools. Let's turn off the paint for now and all the materials so we can just be looking at this. Okay. So I would encourage you playing a lot with these masks. There's just a lot of ways. Number one thing I can do, you might also want to do besides before we get in, because now I'm just getting excited about masking. I don't know why. Masking is exciting.
Because masking is awesome.
I think it's crucial and important, right?
Yeah,
so you can mask even by a draft, right? So look, you get something like this. So you look at that. That's in essence, I set the direction, right? That this is the direction I want it to always look at. So in essence, that's the camera direction I'm looking at. And then I've set that direction. And then I've set an angle even to the mask. Okay. And then this is a way you could mask by the camera. This is one way. But adding on to that, we can have a draft angle to this. So a 2-degree draft angle on this. And then you can see, if we flip it, you can see, okay, don't ask again. You can see the difference here of what I'm getting, right? And now the nice thing about this, okay, is if we started to do stuff like sorry if you're watching Pitch Dev Studios, you start sculpting on something like this, right? This draft angle that I've set, if I hit mask by draft again, okay, because I set the angle, notice that it no longer needs to look at the camera. So in essence, I can use this to store a specific angle based upon my camera, right? And a draft angle. And then I can move the model freely anywhere I want and even sculpt. And then when I hit this mask by draft, it's still going to use the original angle and show me a mask based upon that draft, right? So this is widely used in production. Like this was asked specifically for all the users that I speak to on a regular basis and with CAD programs, and they're trying to make product, whether it be aviation, or automotive, or literally product, like that we hold in our hands. ZBrush is used that way. So this is one thing that they were like, hey, we really need something that can give me a mask so I can verse it, flip it, and work that way. Okay. The other thing that's making me go this route to the question, since it's being asked, is also one thing you got to think about too is polygrouping. I can use polygroups to create masks as well. Okay. So I can come down into polygroups, and something that I think is very useful as well is group front. So this is camera driven as well. So it's only going here. We'll turn off. Let me turn off the lines. Okay. So this is now, see, it's blue. But if I rotate it, see, there's still the green, minty green for that matter. Mint green. Okay. So this is the original polygroup. So in essence, this is making a polygroup based upon the camera angle. And of course, you have the ability to mask the polygroup like that, and then flip it if you want to. So it's just another way, but then you also get a polygroup, so you're kind of storing that in the model as well. All right.
Yeah,
So
John says, those secret buttons, those hidden little buttons.
oh, there are little secrets there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Also,
Okay,
too,
so
I want to just point, sorry, real quick, Paul. I
go
just
ahead.
want to point out, too, I like to point this out, especially for those who don't know, because I find that every day more and more people aren't aware of it. But when you're looking at features or you're unsure of what something does, just hover over that feature and press and hold Control or Command if you're on Mac. And that will pop up a little auto note to kind of give you a sense of what something that is. So if you're looking at all these masking options as Paul's showing, you're just not sure, go ahead and hover over that feature, press and hold Control, and kind of read the description of what it does, and then feel free to test it out. It's a really great way to dive into these secret little menus that are all throughout ZBrush.
Yeah. I see the question about the triangulation, and you might want to turn on a feature within inside of Redshift that will you don't even have to divide up your model if you want to. If you look at this model, right, when we were rendering this, let me skip this. See, it's all faceted, right? This is all faceted in there. But when the render, you guys didn't see. You saw it nice and smooth, okay? Because you can tell Redshift at render time to smooth that surface out. And you guys can you control this by subtool by subtool. Because something like the head now, I don't need it because the head's been divided up. It's already got smoothness. All right. And then I will get to your question, Javier, about the local sim. I got you. I got you. All right. So in subtools, all right, down at the bottom, there are Redshift properties. So you can see in particular, this model has it turned off, right? This is the mesh that I'm looking at right now, and it's got it turned off, okay, right now. So this, if you turn this on, when it gets kicked to Redshift to render, Redshift is then going to smooth your normals. So just like you are doing, Noah, in your gaming engines, you're smoothing your normals. This is exactly same thing. So you might want to try and see about turning that on, number one, right? Or this could be something where you turn on dynamic and let dynamics, right? But obviously triangulation is going to be a different division. So this is why instead of turning on dynamics, I would just turn this on. Excuse me, and then kick that to Redshift to render with. Does that make sense? I'm hoping answers the question for y'all.
Yep. And then also too, when you turn on your Redshift smooth surface, you have the apply last action to all subtools available. So if you have something of high complexity like what is being shown on the screen right now by Pitch Dev, sorry.
Pitch Dev Studios.
Pitch Dev. So you'll be able to then apply that same action to all the subtools, because the smooth surface is subtool dependent, because some subtools you may not want to smooth and other ones you may want to. So you have the freedom to go ahead and choose which ones you want, but just know that last apply last action really becomes a lifesaver, especially with the complexity of like 100 subtools throughout. You don't want to go one by one. That'll just take way too long. So definitely use that too.
Yeah. And this is why we're doing these streams, everybody, too, is trying to help you, walk you through as much as you can. Okay, so I showed the weathering, right, on Fitch. So here's one of my ships, and this is what I'm saying. Like, I'll load the one before the weathering, and this is all ZBrushing, like just everything. Paint and everything, even the camouflage. So this is the kind of stuff that I like to do with some of my hard surface, just push it a little bit more. And then now that I got Redshift at my disposal. Now that I have Redshift available,
you just threw it out.
Yeah, right. So, welcome to my world. You can see all this kind of nice weathering that I'm doing to the ship. I thought like the back end, right? And every piece I was playing with those masking options to kind of get different results and different things. And then this just starts getting me down the path. I still want to do more with this model. Okay. So this is what we're looking at like right now, right? With all this weathering and things like that. So here we'll drop this a little bit here. We'll put a version of it right there. Okay. And now we're going to say, let me load the version that doesn't have all the weathering. And in fact, because it's a project, I don't want to reload the whole project. I just want to load the mesh from the project. So in the tool palette, I'm going to use this load from tools from project, which is huge. I use it a lot. And especially now that we have things like you're playing maybe with a Redshift rendering, you might find, and I've talked to studios that even before there was Redshift, when you're getting approvals even, or you're working on a character and you're just trying to see the character and maybe even just doing a simple gray sculpt and you find nice lighting and nice things you want, the best thing is to save that out as a project. And now when you guys work on other meshes, and let's say it is a project, right? Every time you load a project in ZBrush, we're reloading all the menus. We're relooking at multiple menus and reloading stuff. Where a tool, loading of a tool, only looks at the tool palette to load things. Okay, our project's going to load a lot more. So I've been using projects. So what I'm going to do is, you know what? I want to load the project, but I want to go get, as you can see, way back when, the very first one, right? And then open that. And what ZBrush is doing now is that instead of reloading the whole project, it's only loading that model and still keeping all the parameters in the project. So i.e., I made a screenshot of this fully weathered one. I know that it would get a new document space. And so I said, no, I'm just going to load. That's the benefit of this button. I see it as I'm going to find a really nice rendering scene that I'm going to use on all my stuff. Maybe just to get nice views, maybe a nice gray render for turntables. Now I'd have that saved as a project, and I can load any project or tool into that, right? So if you're doing tools, you do the normal way, load tool. You're doing projects, I would do this. So you're not resetting your whole project. Okay?
Yep.
So how long did it take me to build this ship? That's a good question. Honestly, I'm trying to think because I made it last year. It didn't take me too long, in all honesty. I don't know. I would maybe say if I had to throw a dart at it as far as how long it took me, I say max 40 hours, but I don't think it took that. I think it took me about 25 to 30 hours to make it.
Yeah, so yeah, on and off. What about
on
2
and
days?
off. Yeah, on and off.
Yeah,
somewhere around there. Yeah, definitely on and offing for sure. Right. So you can see this is where I'm starting to weather things, starting to figure things out. Right. So if I load, let's load another one. That's the start. And then here we will load where I was. Let's see. Let's load this one now. So in essence, what I'm loading is variations of this ship from projects is what I'm doing. Right. So here's where I started. Okay. So this is where we want to get to now. Right. So you saw a couple progresses in here. You see the final result on the top. Let's just look at now this overall. Number one, I am using a particular material. So you can hover over this by click and dragging. You can see what material I'm using. So I am using a Redshift material. I'm like, I got Redshift now available. I might as well use it. Let's go. Okay. I've got a color also filled on it. But what also is very nice about this is definitely a little tip of the hat to Elysium. I had the book. I'm an art book collector. Okay. Just FYI. Okay. And I started circling through. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make a ship that would fit in that world of Elysium. Okay. And then they have a ship that has like camouflage and stuff. So I'm like, well, what if I was making one that was going to be maybe out in the desert or something like that? And that's why I wanted to go with this. And my thought process is, what's going to be the fastest way to get camo on this, or camouflage, or any kind of pattern maybe on my hard surface piece? And so this is a combination of me picking a color, all right, and using surface noise. Okay. Ooh. That's what this is. This is a combination of these elements. So right now, this is all paint applied to this model. Okay. So I've got paint being applied to that. So I would find a base color first. So I'm going to switch to paint color here. So my goal would be, let me find a base color. And obviously I'm going kind of desert. And in fact, I think I still have it in here. Let's see. Yeah, here it is. Here is a swatch I found of exact colors that the military would use in the United States for depending on where, this is being deployed, right? So you can just hold the C key and then just hover your cursor over and find that color right there, right? So you can see, if you watch over here, not here, not here.
Not in the eye.
Here, right? So you can see the colors are switching over there, right? The one key thing I would say if you're going to do this, so this is just a texture that I have on a plane. Make sure you fill the plane with flat color, okay? Because you don't want to pick up the material shading as well, which there is a way around that, all right? So this is all I did. I said, well, let me go get real colors in the military. And so I went, no, I'm going to go with the light sand color. And then going back now to my model, which is here, all right? Then I said, let's fill it with some color. So that's simple thing, color, fill the object with some color. There's my color with just the material. And you see, to me, it was like, this is really plain looking. I'm not really digging this. And that's why I was like, let's start taking advantage of some surface noise, but not in the sense of even sculpting noise per se, but other things. So now you can see if I turn on my noise, camouflage. And what I'm doing is if we go in the edit here, all right, I am telling ZBrush, all right, to have no mixing, right? So there's no mixing happening. You can see if I have this slider, by default, you would have this at a 0.5. I'm going to say 0. So what the mixing is doing is it's mixing this noise with either an image or either, whatever way you want to say it, with an image or with this, or it mixes this noise with the plugin that I'm using right now. Okay. And then this would be the way I go about it. And all I'm doing is using the camouflage that actually comes with ZBrush. That's what I'm using. There's a camouflage that comes with ZBrush, and that's all I'm using to it. All right. So let me...
While that's loading, I just want to answer a question. It's not a dumb question. So when you are going to install ZBrush, you do need the Maxon app in order to install ZBrush. So yes, you want to download the Maxon app, and then and then from there, once you sign in, you'll be able to install ZBrush from there, because the app is now showcasing all of the software that you will have access to depending on what subscription or perpetual licenses you own. So you will need to install it through that app. However, you can also log into your Maxon account on the website. And if you have any legacy perpetual licenses, or you have a perpetual version of ZBrush, you could also download that through the Maxon website under your account. So there's a couple ways to go about it, but the app is the preferred method.
Yeah. Okay. Great question that just came up. Also, I'm seeing in the chat. I'm going to turn off the Polypaint because right now this is filled. Now it's not filled. So the question is asking, how can I see this? I was actually going to this. How can I see the colors on the model? In this case, also, maybe I changed my mind and I almost didn't go this route with him, because then I started looking at the colors and going, what would it look like in a different color? So to the question it's asking, can I look at it? Yes. So you can see I can find maybe I want to go the green route instead, right? So this is using the camouflage that's in the surface noise. And then now I'm just picking, in essence, what would be the fill color. And what's happening is the surface noise is looking at this color, and then it's looking at the camouflage, and it's giving me the 3 shades of green, in essence, in here. I'm letting ZBrush do the work for me, in essence here. That's what I'm trying to have it do. Okay, so what I've done is I've turned off the Polypaint because I've already filled it with like that, that sand color. So if you just turn off this brush over here, okay, now in essence, ZBrush says there's no filled color. I like to explain this, the simplest term is I like to explain it is, back in the day when I poorly painted with oil color, you always have to gesso your canvas, right? So that means you're applying paint. You're applying a gesso. It's white, granted. And then you move into primary colors. And think about it in that sense. With that brush stroke off, we've got a blank canvas. So what gesso, i.e. what color do you want to fill this canvas with? And as long as the brush is off, we can see, if I just hold the C key and move my cursor, I can see all the color changing with also the camouflage, right? So to me, this is, in essence, this is literally what I did. Okay. So to your question, this is how I did that. And then I went, you know what? I am going to go this route, because I made a version of it also with the Navy. Like, what if it was a ship that's going to be out, it's part of the Navy. So I did a version like this. And I was like, no, I'm going to go back to being in the desert.
Desert Storm,
right? So this is now, I want to say that's the color I've decided to fill it with. And then the surface noise, I want to now say apply it to the mesh. Right now, it's even a preview. So I can turn the noise off and there's nothing. Right? So this is also the beautiful thing is I can look at the fill color, look at dust. I'm also using masking. So you can see in here, this is masked off. So if we inverse it, right, there's some masking in there that I was doing in there as well. And so I'm going to turn the noise on and then tell it to apply to the mesh. And then now this is going to take that information and apply. So now this is Vertex Polypaint information. Now, if you guys now go back to what I started this stream with, right, I want to start making this look a little bit cooler. So this is where all my masking stuff comes into play. And I strongly encourage you to start playing with these masks. Okay.
Yeah.
So this would be, how do I want to start masking stuff off? Okay. As an example, we can go again to our masking, and I see the question about the normals, and then I can go smoothing, and then I can say, well, let me just see what the default does. What does that look like, right? By default, that's what I want to see, what that's going to do for me, and start putting a mask on this model, right? So you can see this is sitting at 6.6 million, and it's actually a live Boolean result that's happening in here. All right. So I might want to start playing with ranges, start playing with, the fall off, going a little crazy in here, right? And then now you can start seeing a mask coming through in here. I can say, you know what, let's make a bigger range too. So this is saying I don't want a lot of blurring. And then this is now making my range bigger. So see, I'm getting a bigger mask now. So if we inverse this, and then now I decide, do I want to do a sharpen and let a sharpening like this happen? Or do I want to go backwards? Right? And then this is where an example here, I'm going to inverse it because I only care about the edges. And then this is where maybe I'll dilute instead. See, and it's giving away, or maybe I boost instead. And so see that there's a very different looking mask that's taking place based upon how I decide what to do the mask after I've done that mask by smoothness. I want to add some things in here, right? So this is then an example of like, okay, I kind of like that. I like to hide my mask, okay, which is Control H, which all it is doing this right in here, right? That right there. Okay, hiding your mask in there, okay? And then now I just pick a material that I like. Let's say I want to do RS lead this time. Okay, so I'm going to hide the mask, and then I'm going to say, just give me only the material, color, fill object. And then there I got some real quick weathering to take place with another material, mind you, right? Because this brown part, that's the camouflage part, has one type of material, and then this has a different material being applied. Let's also not forget, people, this is a mask, okay? So I can even keep it like this, and if I wanted to, I can say I've got standard brush with this material, right? So I've got Z add and material. I'm going to drop the intensity down because right now I didn't hook up. And you can even just paint with that as well. And by me adding the Z intensity, right? So if we go, well, I'm not going to go that crazy. If I go a little bit more, I'm also sculpting in here, right? So I can push in and you can see the light updating, right? So if we clear the mask, right? And then here we turn off all material. Let's turn off everything here. And then just look again at this. You can see there's sculpted detail in there. So in essence, I can use this even as a chiseling a little bit, right? Because this is paint. I want to get to that lead because that's the paint being rubbed off and gone. So if you think about this, okay, you all could go about the process of using this. And like I said, obviously I'd use some pressure sensitivity. You can change this up, right? And then now I'm going to say this, I'll probably want some Z sub, and then just lightly paint over top of this area. And then so I'm not just only applying material or paint, I'm applying a sculptural change there as well, which is important to understand. So I'm adding a little bit of chiseling in there. It's slight, but enough for the light to catch it is what I'm looking for.
We got a question coming in about, do you need UV mapping? Do you have UVs on this? Or are you using
No.
Nope.
No. That's the beauty, is I don't need mapping on this.
Yeah.
That's the point of going this direction. I don't need any UV mapping at all on this. It's just letting the masking do the work and doing the control.
Yeah. And this is such a really awesome hard surface technique too. Because again, we're talking about like the ability to really apply different techniques to get materials, different colors, and even, like you said, like scratches, scribe lines, little details. It's so cool because like I mostly sculpt organic, and I would never have thought to take that approach, but it's so cool to see how you can like get this type of weathering on armor even. So it's really fun.
So see, I'm looking just for that, a little bit of subtleness of the dip happening in there, right? So that's there. That's that's the sculpted area right there, which then I'm going to have supporting material. And then because I have lighting also in Redshift rendering, that's going to add just a touch of maybe some speck there that sells that, hey, this is actually rubbed off paint getting to the metal. Okay. No, I did not do the Skeletor behind me. That was done by a Korean artist. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty awesome. It is ZBrush though. That was done in ZBrush. It was done in, it's by Tweederhead. And it was an artist in Korea that sculpted it. It's absolutely gorgeous. Gorgeous sculpt. Okay. Okay, so with this done, the thing then you guys got to be, again, what I like to keep going down a rabbit hole here with us before I get to all the other questions here too. What you got to be thinking about here is we're using masking. So what do I have at my disposal? So just besides doing something like here, let's do the mask again so we can really see it, right? Let's inverse it maybe, and this time I'm going to sharpen it. Okay, so there's that mask. Beautiful, right? Look at just that. You can see all the weathering that I would get from this just does let ZBrush do some of the work for me. Right. And we're only right now talking about mask by smoothness. That's it. That's all we're talking about right now. Okay. And this is going to go into that question someone was asking me about masking by a certain plane. That's 100% possible. All right. But before we get to that, what I want you all to be thinking about is it's ZBrush. It's a sculpting application. Right. So I also have masking brushes. Okay. To do what I want with. So what I like to do is play a little bit and say, I'll drop my focal. So I can kind of get this, right? I want this ability. See the little blurring that's happening there? I could even say, let's just get rid of that completely and just make this be like some kind of harsh brush like this, right? And then maybe throw some alphas on this, right? So grabbing even say something like this, and then just start me doing some parts of just where I want this to kind of meet maybe a little bit different. Change my brush size. Right. And then do just little subtle changes in there. Right. So then this is me controlling more what I'd want this weathering to look like. So maybe in this corner got weathered more than the other corners, like just taking advantage. And obviously you all have your own alphas, your own brushes. This is me just using straight what's inside of ZBrush, right? And then go, maybe I'll go a little bit bigger now. And then, yes, there. Right. And I like to turn it and cross hatch it. Right. Because it'll start adding a nice little point of interest there. Right. Let's not forget you got other masking brushes. Okay. I could use like square and then grab an alpha of something else. Right. I can grab stuff like this and then just start making dots even in places. Right. And then I'm going to be using this. And let's not forget, I can not just material with this, right? I can say now I've got RGB selected, color, and fill that, right? And then now look, see, I've got just paint with it as well. So you can use materials, you can use paint with this, okay? And then now obviously I've taken the just grabbing a Redshift material instead, right? And then said, let me fill it. I only need material because this has got its own color. And then fill it with that. And then this is the weathering I start to get. Right? This kind of stuff. It's just, I don't know. It just adds a little more element for me when I'm inside of ZBrush. And then now that I have Redshift at my disposal, I want to be able to render it out. Now, someone's asking about saving a mask. There is multiple ways to do this. Obviously, one way would be if you did have UVs, you could save it to a texture. Okay. But since I don't have UVs, right, the things you got to be thinking about, what can we do with masks? Number one, the first one would be, let me turn this on and turn this off, is doing a, well, let's not do this one. Let's go back to pen and this, and let's do this, right? You can make a new polygroup. In essence, I can recall that mask anytime I want to, right? So there, that mask is recalled. So technically, you could use something like polygroups, okay? you could just polygroup off. So if you've got a mask that you've taken time to perfect, just turn it into a polygroup. And then now you can recall that over and over and over and over and over again. Okay, this could be one way. Now, you might have polygroups that you already like, and you don't want to destroy your polygrouping. Another way to go about this is in layers. Layers will also store masking information for us. So I can always recall that mask. So now that this layer is in record mode, I can come down into my masking and then make a mask that I want. And maybe this one, I want to do a different type of masking. That's going to happen in here. We need to, it's too dark to see. Let's switch to this. And let's switch our paint back to that. And let's turn this off, right? So let's turn our paint off so you all can see this better, right? So there's the mask. Okay. This is a mask that I want to start, we can start storing stuff in the layer, right? And then the layer can be turned on and off. And then you see I can bring the mask back in record mode. And then I can have that mask come back for me, right? So this mask is actually stored in this layer. So now anything I want to do to this model painting wise, I can sit here and just paint whatever I want. And then I would be processed in the layer as well. So this is just another way you could go about doing this. If that makes sense. So these are ways that you can definitely have that done. Now, the question also came about other masking. So I'm going to, we don't need this anymore. So someone was asking about masking out flat surfaces and things like that. Okay, again, there's more than one way to do this in ZBrush, in all honesty. There's a lot of ways to get things done. There is a masking feature, is just mask by normals. Okay, and then you can mask based upon normals in here, and you can have no blurring, right? So you can start using this and ramping up the masking in here and start finding normals this way. But what you also can do is switch to your transpose smart mask. And you can actually grow out a mask based upon the normals. Like there. See, it is finding all the normals along the top here is what it's doing. And I'm assuming this is what the person was looking for, right? And you can control this as the user, right? I can come to this part of the ship instead and start masking out that portion of the ship. And you see, it'll keep growing and growing and growing and growing and growing to the whole ship, right? So this is my range in essence. So you see my crosshairs? Can everyone see my look up here? Look at my crosshairs. Everyone's awake now. This is my range controller. I'm controlling the range of this, right? So all you're doing is you're switching again to a different gizmo. You're switching to transpose smart. This is the difference with this gizmo compared to just the transpose gizmo. This also works with the transpose line for those that are using the transpose lines, okay? And then all you do is pick somewhere on the flat surface. This is definitely Lisa needs braces moment. Thanks, Brenda.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hold control, click on it, and then just start moving your hand. And then boom. Now, if I keep growing, see, it's going to just keep growing. See, now it's starting to get into here, and I don't like that. I only want to mask off this top portion right here and nothing else. Okay? So if you notice, when I do this, there's a point of there. That's it. I'm at the edge. I'm at the edge. I'm at the edge. I'm at the edge. Okay? There is ways to also turn this in with a brush that we can play with too. So this area right here and this area is not being masked. So what I can do is now come over here and add to the mask. And then come over here and add to the mask. So I can keep adding, in essence, do a secondary mask as much as I want. And keep adding to this as much as I want to. Okay.
It's amazing.
So what I'm doing to do that is I'm holding control, click and dragging to get the initial, okay, I got to go backwards right about there, right? Now I want to start putting this in because it couldn't calculate it with that first range. So then I'm going to say, let me add a secondary range now. So go anywhere with your cursor here, right? I'm going to go with a little bit bigger brush size. And then hold control, click, and then hold shift now. And now it's adding, shift is adding to the mask. So now I'm telling it to reevaluate that range, right? And then there's a point where I'm going to stop there, right? And then so in this scenario, I would have to do a couple of those. But I'd rather do a couple of those than sitting there trying to figure out how the heck am I going to mask that off. Right?
Yeah.
The other thing that you guys should be thinking of is also never doubt your polygroups. Never, ever doubt your polygroups. Okay? So we know what right now? Every single one of these polygon faces, and by the way, you can use this on a subdivided surface. This is not subdivided right now, right? Everything I just shown you can be on a subdivided surface. The one thing also that you guys need to be aware of that maybe some of you don't know, excuse me, is ZModeler. Everyone thinks that this thing can only be used on non-subdivided surface. That is not the case. I would say now 4 versions ago, we allowed this brush to even be used on subdivided surfaces, but only the features, only the features that do not change topology. Which there's a lot. There's a lot, people.
Yeah. Also, too, with the mask region as well, for those who still like to draw things out really, really quickly, you could quickly draw your custom shapes along the edges and then fill that region real fast, too. So there's a ton of options and approaches to mask out an area that has complex shapes or weird little angles. So don't forget about that, too. And that's brand new.
Okay, so the other thing here, right, is I could switch to ZModeler, spacebar, polygroup, flat island.
Woo-hoo.
And now all I just click on one polygon, and then now every single polygon that have the normals going the same directions start getting that, right? So then I can keep even continually same thing. I can add to it as much as I want. So you have this ability too, right? And the island in essence is looking for polygons all facing the same normal direction island. So I use this all the time to just get a quick polygroup, and then there's my mask, right? Because you're going to use your polygroup in essence for your mask, right? So it's just going through here and then clicking on what I want. So it's just another way to go about this. Does that make sense for everybody? Right? Hopefully.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, as far as your bar relief
You
question, no, there is no, but what you can do for that is use either a layer, use your undo history, use any one of those. Since tangent came from the air, tangent. We're gonna come back. We got to come back to the local thing and everything too. Tangent. Okay. So because my head does this. You ask a question and my mind goes on a tangent. I want to answer the question for you, is what I'm looking to do here. Okay.
That's what they want.
So I'm going to say that to your question is the BasRelief. Let me throw something together real fast, because obviously I was not prepared to talk about this. We'll just use Mr. Demo Head. Why not? We all know him. We all love him. He's here for us. Yeah. Right. And then let's append a cylinder, I guess. And then we'll do this. And let's rotate the cylinder 90 degrees. Make it be like this. Let's go a little bit bigger. Something like this. And then let's just divide it up some. So we've got some information in here, right? And then I'm assuming you're speaking to specifically like this ability down here, which we have project the BasRelief, right? And then it's looking at the models in front of it, right? And starting to project it. Oh, that's got to be. See here, this is also, see those triangles? Lovely.
Love it.
Lovely triangles. This is because this is a great example of one vertex to rule them all. No good, right? So before I did this, it would have been better. I did that on purpose. You just didn't know it.
I figured.
It would have been better, right? Here's the polygrouping, probably to show this, and then come down here and actually do a remesh of it, right? So I would even probably do something like crease it, divide it up enough there. That's enough. And then I'm just going to only remesh this portion, right? So now I've got those quads. So now I don't have those poles in the middle. And then now I can keep dividing up. And now when I do turn everything on, and do that ball relief.
Ball relief.
I'm assuming you're asking about, you want to change in essence, right, the depth of that, right? So you could put it on a layer, number one, or you can use the adjust last and you can flip it. So you can do this if that's what you're asking for, right? And so I can play with the height of that, where I want to put it, and go crazy if I want to, right? So this will be a way to do it. And you can use, this is using your undo history to do it. Or you put it on a layer. When I say a layer, I'm talking about a sculpting layer, right? You put it on this, and then you've got 5 times fold.
Yep, I think that's good. Also, too, the gizmo snapping feature that we were showcasing with a Y perfectly up is the question. Can you show some of the gizmo snapping?
There you go. There's Y, looking at Y. So this is based upon feedback and people using. This is something that was in ZModeler, and we're like, hey, let's put this on. Let's make it even faster for when I'm sculpting. I don't have to switch to a brush. So now you can use the gizmo. And if you hold Alt key, we look at the normals. So like, for example, if I come in here, you can see this is kind of now not sitting perfectly straight. If you guys hold the Shift key and click on any one of the arrows, we are now make the camera look directly at that normal that I clicked on. So again, hold the Shift key, click, and now it's looking directly at that normal. All right, so this is stuff that you can do. And then now looking right at that normal through there. If that's what they're asking about.
Yeah. And Pojo was saying, talking about details are not, not good during the projecting phase. You want to make sure too that your model has enough subdivisions to capture the detail of that projection as well. If you have a super complex model that you're trying to project on a flat plane and there's not enough vertices to capture the detail, then that detail is not going to look as good. So try subdividing your model up a little bit more, then project again, and then from there you can play and see how much more detail is being captured.
Yeah, then you're going to want to play with these settings, like up your count, tell it to do more than the count. You might want to adjust your tolerance and maybe add some contrast. So the tolerance is probably going to be your biggest one. So what I would recommend is, again, hover over this. Okay, so it's looking at grayscale values between the points to project. In essence, you're having ZBrush make up stuff for you. So you might want to try this, like adjusting this.
Yep.
So it's about a distance. It's looking, in essence, any points of change relief that are within 0.2 of distance of each other. Anything from that ZBrush makes up, anything from that and lower, right? So you might want to play with those as well. And it all comes down to what you're trying to bas relief with into is going to play a role into that too. Like Ian said, I would make sure you have enough polygon counts as number one, because you're doing a projection into it, right? If you're using this bas relief version. Okay. The other question that came up since we're there, okay, and since I have this guy, before we get back into some rendering, other things I want to talk about for rendering, is someone asked about the new ability with the gizmo, right? Ian, I'm going to let the cat out of the bag.
Okay, do it.
Right?
Do it. Hands are free.
For those of you that are in ZBrush 2023, we just dropped a patch in the middle of this stream. You can, if nobody noticed, I'm actually using 2023.0.1.
I just dropped a link into the ZBrush Central, so you can go check out the patch notes on that. Go ahead, Paul. All right, take a step back.
So this patch is available to any perpetual 2023 user and any subscriber to ZBrush. You can already start getting it now. Okay. We have a list of things that we have added, and not necessarily added, but changed and fixed in here. Okay. So you can go to ZBrush Central, and we've added one thing because I was holding off on the dynamic, is we added something also now to the new gizmo, where you can now rotate the model in space, right? Well, let's turn symmetry off. And if you're rotating the model in space, what we've always had is the ability of not being able to keep our symmetry. right? Because it's rotated. Now, if you turn on local sim, right? If we here sculpting wise, okay, you want to start looking at a model based upon their symmetry. Okay, so now there is actually two versions of local symmetry. So there's the dynamic, which is the new one that's looking at when you rotate a model around in space now, right? With local sim on here. If I start rotating this, so we'll center this right now. And then if I start rotating him around in space, now it just looks funny, right? And then now you can start sculpting. You can see I still have symmetry. So in essence, I can now in ZBrush rotate my model freely anywhere in space, okay, and still maintain symmetry. And what it's using is the gizmo. So you can see it's using, there's my X. So that's what it's using to look at, right? So you can see when I look at the front of him, it's using that as its symmetry line now. Right? And what we've done is given also now in the patch, we giving you back the old local symmetry, because there were scenarios that some of you brought up that now you still wanted to have the ability to do, i.e. something like I want to resize the eyeballs symmetrically here, right? And so what I want is I don't want the one eyeball, as you can see, to be seen symmetrically. I want both eyeballs to be seen. So now in the patch, there's a dynamic in local sim. So if you just turn that off, now you're back to the ZBrush 2022 version of local sim. So in essence, we've given you guys now regular symmetry, local symmetry, and now local dynamic symmetry. So now when I go and scale things up like this, right, you got that the eyeball scale individually. And this is one of the features that people wanted to have back, right? So then there you go.
Whoop, whoop.
And then Pedro, this will work with a posed character as long there is ways to use a posed character as long as the mesh itself is symmetrical. All right. So what I mean by that is if I look at the demo soldier, his mesh is symmetrical. What I mean is the vertex point that's sitting here is also sitting there on the other side, in the exact same location on the hand. Like they're the same, no matter where they are on the hand. So let's say, for example, if I come out of symmetry, okay, and then I decide to do stuff like, let me change to the regular transpose, right? And then come down and do stuff like this, okay? And then I'm going to get really ugly here because I wanted to be really extreme. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so this, right? And now you want to sculpt, right, in symmetry. But the problem is one hand's up, one hand's down. All you need to do is go to transform and use posable symmetry. And because the mesh is symmetrical, you can see the points are in the exact same location now on the hand.
There you go. There you go.
Right? So that's all you would need to do. Can you say?
Yeah.
Okay, so I like these names. The names you guys come up with is amazing. My name stinks on like Hell Rainbow. Love it. It's such a great name. I love that name. That's awesome. Okay, to your question about saving this and morph target, the symmetry and positioning, right? The one thing is the gizmo itself, when you're moving your gizmo around, right? And now I've sort of moved the gizmo like this. You can actually use posable symmetry to reset it. Okay, so if I use posable symmetry, see it reset the symmetry this direction, right? So it's actually resetting the symmetry. This is one way you can reset your gizmo even after the fact you've moved it. Another way would be I can come to this model and look. In this case, I've got a edge going right down the middle of him. Okay, I can hold the Alt key with the gizmo and then just click and find another point that's perfectly along that edge. And now you see the red arrow. See where that is? There you go, right? And then now you can have this. You know what? One thing, you know what could be fun to try? You know what? I'm going to have some, let's try this. I haven't, my mind just went to this. This is part of development. But you know, you guys are going to see something live here. Let's see. I'm going to do this. Then I'm going to do now the gizmo. Whoops, Might help if I switch to Gizmo, people. Gizmo, right? That's perfectly aligned, right? So see how flat it is? And then now unclip. Yes! Workflow found live streaming. Yes! Right? Because the reason why I did that, by the way, is when you hold Alt and click on the gizmo, right? It will find any vertex point you click on, right? But this is also taking an effect that this vertex point is sticking further out in space, right? So it's got to find, see, it's finding the curvature in essence of his pec. Right?
Can you
so
repeat
then
that
I'm
last?
like, well, I know my clip brush will flatten the mesh. So all these normals are the same now. And when I hold the Alt key and click, I got to remember to move the gizmo, hold the Alt key, and then boom, all these normals are what? They're all the face. So this gizmo is completely being reset. And then I can actually unclip the clip by control spacebar. And you see unclip is now available. But the gizmo has nothing to do with that. So it stays in its correct location.
Boom.
Right? And see, look,
I
I'm
love
symmetrical again. Right? So now I'm symmetrical. Okay. There's another way. It doesn't end there. I'm just like Skittles here. It's all being sprinkled out everywhere. All these things. It's happening. It's everywhere. We're tripping. We're falling. We're having fun. Everyone take a break. Take a swig of water. Let's continue. So the other way to go about this is use ZModeler. We added in 2023, you guys can literally pick where does the gizmo sit between any two edges, any vertex point, and any face, which in essence, it's resetting the gizmo, i.e. also resetting that new local symmetry ability, right? That's what's happening here. Okay, so now you can hold spacebar, and we have set symmetry. So you can do this by a polygon face, you could do this by an edge, and you can do this by a vertex point. It's your decision. How do you want to do this? Right? So now you just got to tell ZBrush, it's telling you, look, set symmetry, click the first polygon. So then I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to click that one. And now it says, click the second one. I'm going to go over to the other side. Boom. And look where the gizmo sits. Dead center of those two clicks. Pedro's having a sugar rush. I like it.
Tons of Skittles and coffee. It's everywhere.
Yeah. All right. So this is a way I can, there's 3 ways you can reset your gizmo now inside of ZBrush based upon you, the user, deciding where it goes. Okay. So there you go. Okay. Continuing on. And did I miss anything, Ian? Before I continue back, I want to go. Let me
go back to the future
or rewind.
Yeah.
Okay, well, back to rendering here. Let's
there's still a whole lot. But again, like all these tips are super useful. That's why we like to have these streams, because we like to answer your questions too, and also, you know, open up ideas and possibilities. But there's more to it, because again, Paul already let out of the bag that we had a patch for 2023. So, and there's a lot of things there that are also added to bring even more user-friendly approaches to rendering. So we have more options as well. So yeah.
Yep. So that's what I want to get into. Now in Redshift, everybody, we've exposed more power to you. For those of you that are really advanced users that want to have a little bit more control with your render, we've given you more sliders now. So now there is a GI bounce slider. There's a raise slider. There's a threshold, retrace, samples per pixels. Okay. We also have what's called an error threshold slider. Right. And then we continue to push the element here with Redshift as much as possible. So we've added more sliders here. And in the background, there is now a slider for HDR sampling as well. So you can up your samples. That information is being pulled for your lighting from the HDR information. So all this is going to be, if you want to go really down the scoop. The other thing, though, that's really also has changed is your primary engine, your secondary engines have changed. So now we have only one primary engine, which is brute force. So if you scroll over, you see it says 0 is none, 1 equals brute force. This slider says, what do you want to use as your secondary engine? In essence, what else do you want to use as another calculations to your global illuminations? So you can either do none, point cloud, or brute force. And I would say, Ian, myself, Dice K, many of us have really found this version now, our rendering has gotten faster, and we prefer having, me personally, I prefer having my primary as brute and my secondary as the point cloud.
Yeah, well, even just Redshift in general, even in the other applications like Cinema 4D, Blender, Maya, Houdini, 3ds, everywhere that Redshift is accessible, the point cloud method is overall seemingly faster than just brute force. So using the point cloud is going to be for us, like Paul said, it's really like the best option. It gives us the best quality renders, especially when you're doing a lot more with the global illumination and you want like especially emissive lighting and hard surface. Like Paul's been covering his tips on hard surface for Redshift, knowing what it is going to look like and how that global illumination affects it. It's just I really like that render system. It really is awesome. So yeah, highly recommend it. That's why it's default setting, by the way.
Yeah, for the hard surface, as you guys can see, this model back here has like nothing. It's just a simple basic material, and all of this is being emitted from my bubblegum ball here, right? So this is an example of hard surface for me. I really want some emissives. So why I'm bringing up the GI, because the GI is driving your emissive a lot besides just the material. There's only one thing you need to do on the material. Okay, so if we go and look at our modifiers, and let's grab the material that I have, my bubble gum here. Really, the only thing you need to mess with is your emissive weight. The minute you turn that on, everything else just kind of just goes away, because it's going to just be emissing light and overtake the model, right? So I only have it at 10 too. I don't have it emissing like crazy right now. Okay, so obviously you can up this more and more and more. I have found I don't need to go too crazy with this, and then render this out. And so you can see this is the global illumination, and then now this starts to give me the result and give me some emissive coming through this. So I wanted to show you guys in a simple context form, because if you look, my emissive color is purple, right? And you can see the color I'm getting in there is, so you can actually change your color to be different and then let that go. And now I maybe want a green.
It's like a Ghostbusters green.
Yeah. Ooh, Slimer. Good call. Good call.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and you can see, and again, everyone, I'm on my M1 Mac Studio to highlight again that we are compatible with the new Apple Silicon computer chip, which is your M1s and your M2s. And then you have your emissives. Okay. So right now I'm using the defaults, which is just brute force for the first one, and secondary is my point cloud. One thing I want to point out, the sliders that are threshold and samples per pixel only work with point cloud. So if I turn both of these to brute force, you see they'll gray out. So in essence, these two sliders here, they only matter when you have your secondary GI set to 1, i.e. points cloud. All right. And these two sliders here are looking at both sliders. So the raise, this GI raise is only used with brute force. That's it. It's only used with brute force. So if I have it on here and here, these rays are being used in the brute force engine. Okay. If I do this, then this engine is looking at this samples per pixels for its rays. So in essence, this is my primary, which is brute. It's going to look at this for the rays. In essence, how many rays per pixel. The more you turn that up, the better quality you could get now. But obviously, your render time could go up and up and up with that set, okay? And then the secondary one is now looking at, we've exposed this for you. So now your secondary engine, which is doing something completely different, is now using this to sample with and using this threshold. The GI bounce is being used in essence by both. What you got to look at this is brute force is only doing 1 bounce in GI. So in this case, I have 4. So what happens is primary is using 1 bounce in the brute force. And then it looks at my secondary and says, well, how many bounces does my secondary get? And now it's saying it gets 3 more bounces. So if I change this to like 50, what's going to happen is brute force gets 1 bounce for the information, right? And then my secondary gets 49. and then it looks at the other sliders. Like, honestly, I think we've done a pretty good job to find defaults that really 95% of the time you guys can just click render and you're off and running, honestly. Okay, so this is only for if you really want to go down and get a little more advanced, or with certain scenarios that you have. The other thing that we added, in the sense of, this has been taking about 21 seconds to render. If you guys are, when I'm experimenting with rendering, regardless all my years of I've ever rendered in all the applications I've ever rendered in, I want to see the render as fast as possible, right? And kind of see where I'm going and the direction I'm going. So obviously progressive render can help with that, right? Because then I start rendering, and then I just immediately I can start seeing my results right out the gate, right? So you can see I don't have to wait for the whole render. I can stop now and continue on and see, do I like the amount of emissive that's actually happening, as an example here, okay? But maybe my mind clicks by, I need to see the final render a little more clear with the bucket. So I turn off progressive. So what we've added now is something called an error threshold. So by default, this is set to 0.01 right now. Here's the thing. You guys up this slider. Like here, I'm going to up it all the way to 1. Okay. And then I'm going to re-render now and let it render. And then you'll see, look how fast the rendering, boom. Like that took 6.7 seconds to render. Okay. Which I can immediately see what's going on. So this is kind of helping us. We can ramp it up, start figuring things out. And when I'm ready to get my final render, I drop this back down. This is helping with any kind of maybe spotting you're seeing in your renders. This is one slider that will really help with that. So you can see like the illumination we're getting, right, isn't the greatest quality, but I can kind of see how the illumination is going to be spread onto this. And now I've dropped it back down and I render. So we took about 6.7 seconds with it cranked all the way up. And if I'm dropping this down to the default, which is 0.01, obviously you can see my emissive is getting a lot better quality now. Okay. To this.
Yep. And again, Paul is, we like to showcase this because we're rendering on an Apple machine, right? We're working on an M1, and ZBrush 2022 worked on M1 as well, but now we have on 2023 we're working natively. So M1, M2 CPUs, that's available, that's accessible for you to use this version. So it's natively working with the Apple architecture. So again, this was really cool because Paul, you never really streamed with Apple M1. You usually streamed with PC, but now you're streaming with both. Yeah. So I wanted to point that out too while the render was going on. Yep.
So all this stuff is coming into play. So here, let me see about loading something else then, right? Because my goal, my thing was looking at my ship and stuff like that, and then obviously we'll end with my TIE fighter. Was I wanted to be able to start getting some nice renders and playing with these. So I'm trying to show you all things that I like to do and to mess around with, okay, and figure things out. So what also becomes important, so now that I have Redshift, we need to understand a little bit of how the render's working and specifically how they're working with materials. So one thing that becomes the most important thing, since I'm doing hard surface, is the metalness. And how am I working with the metalness to get realistic looking metals to render with Redshift inside of ZBrush? Okay, so I want to touch base a little bit on this. I'm just going to load this up and let this render. So there are things that you're going to need to do. So the IOR slider is probably one of your most important sliders. All right, and then so I want to be able to maybe find certain types of metals and things like that. So I'm going to share some stuff that I have found for you all, that just in my experiments and trying to find things that I want to do. So you can see this is doing a render. So all the white specks is all my GI, global illumination, doing calculations, figuring it out. And now it's giving me the render. And again, I'm native on a MacBook, a Mac Studio Pro right now on an M1 Ultra is what I'm on.
Yep. And real quick too, we had a question about, if they can do real-time rendering. Redshift is not a real-time renderer, so no, you won't be able to do real-time rendering with Redshift.
Yeah. So this what you're seeing right now, this is a material that I made that has metalness. It's not cranked way up crazy. Okay. But what I've also done with this is what I want to highlight is start highlighting some of the things we can play with. So you can see the red around parts of the blue, like through in here, the red in there, the red in here. It's not a light doing that. It's the material doing that. So not only do I want to take advantage of lighting, I want to take advantage of the materials themselves as well. Because that's what rendering is. It is a lot of experimenting and figuring things out. Okay.
Yep.
So this is just a simple thing. So what I'm doing, if we come over here to our material, I've got metalness on this material at like 1.5. So it's not even cranked up that far. But I'm now also doing a reflective color. And where I'm controlling that color is down here. So you see there's a reflect color and see my base color. So I am making a material that is this blue for the whole material with a reflect of red. And I'm telling ZBrush, even if I had Polypaint on, you always are going to use this blue. And the way I'm telling it is by using this slider that says use material color. So I've turned this on to tell ZBrush, don't look at the vertex color paint information. Look at this swatch color right here. That's all I want you to look at. Okay. And then I'm saying, look at this red to reflect the color. So if I change this, let's change it to a green. Okay. Now it's updated. And so now maybe what I want to see is, let me just see right in here, because I can see the green. Actually, I'll come down here and I'm going to do a Control R instead and let that render out. There's my global illuminations. And then there you go. And again, I have the setting set pretty high all the way right now for my global, so that I can see this. And now what I like to do is do a comparison. There's the red, there's the green. And I'm using get down. I'm using the recall. I'm sorry, I have to do it. I know it's annoying, but I apologize. Okay, is the recall.
You sounded so angry.
And I can actually switch between this. And this is actually, look at the material, everybody. Look over here. Look at here. Right here. The green. And now watch. If I go back to recall, look, it reset it to red. This recall is calling the material that I changed. So if I now really start to play with this, I use an example. If I say, you know what, let's crank the metalness. Let's crank the color. Look at that crazy metal material I'm getting now, right? Look at all the more green. Let me render that out. Do I like, I don't know about you, but I go down the wrong path sometimes rendering where I just get a little too crazy with my renderings. So I can just Control R and render different regions here. And I want to see what this looks like where it's crazy metal reflection happening. Okay. And also have that color. And now, right, I've changed these sliders and these colors, but I'm like, okay, that's not working for me. Right. So look, I can go backwards and even go back and see my sliders changed and the color changed. So this is what I really like about this recall. This is the point of the recall. Was I'm working on this model. I'm tweaking and I'm tweaking and tweaking. And in all honesty, sometimes I go the wrong way with the tweak. It doesn't work for me. Okay.
That happens to me all the time. I spend hours doing my renders because I take my time by setting up like one light, and then I get it where I want, then I add another light, then I hate it, then I adjust it. And then, yeah, then it's like material playing. Like I've spent a lot of time rendering because, like you said, it's a lot of trial and error, and that's something too that's really neat. And what we're trying to showcase as well through this 5-part series of using Redshift in ZBrush is how do you integrate that with the different models that you have, and also too, how does that change the way you look at your model? Since using this, I found it really simple to even create quick renders that look really good to get things approved faster, because now I can see the life of my character. I can see the metallics in my spaceships. I can see the lights and the lightsabers. It's really just, there's a lot more that you can bring on a dynamic level when you start integrating both of these. So, and then be able to use the recall feature allows us to kind of just start pulling sliders with a little bit more ease, knowing you can dial that back. So lots of possible workflows to just move a slider, see what it looks like. You don't like it? Boop, send it back.
Yeah, I can't tell. And honestly, all the renders I've rendered with, I've rendered with Redshift, I've rendered with RenderMan, I rendered with V-Ray, I rendered with Arnold, I rendered with all these. That was always my number one biggest problem was I messed everything up and I went to work backwards. So this is what I love about this recall. Okay. And yes, Redshift is using the GPU. It is. As long as you have a subscription to either the Redshift subscription or Maxon One, you can use the GPU Redshift. If you have a subscription to ZBrush, then it's only the CPU version of Redshift. So in essence, you cannot get the Redshift GPU version without having either a subscription to Redshift by itself or having the Maxon One, which gives you every software that we develop. Now, the one thing I also want to highlight about this, if you guys have a subscription to Redshift, this can be used in any of the DCCs. So if you're using Maya, you're using Max, you're using Houdini, you're using Blender, you're using ZBrush, that one license can be used to render in any one of those programs with Redshift. You can't render both at the same time, but you can render with them. Okay. Yeah. So just keep that in mind. So the other thing too, that obviously having metalness with working on a hard surface, roughness is probably self-explanatory, right? It's rough. Do you want it to be more rough? Do you want that spec to change a little bit more, right? And add a little more roughness to it. See, so it's kind of not as specularity so much happening on it. Again, I'm just going to, from here on out, just use Control R to highlight this. Okay, so there's that material with the roughness at 0.5. There's what it was before. Like that's super crazy shiny. Okay, so just even that, maybe you want a little bit more softer metal. All right, but I did bring up the IOR in the beginning. This is your most important part. This is where you are going to use finding out, I want a more realistic metal looking material. Okay, so I'm going to share some stuff with you right now that I have found to be incredibly useful for finding things and looking at things. Okay, first thing is I want to share just the Redshift documentation on what I'm starting to talk about here with materials. So this link's about going and giving you guys information about just standard material information that I'm talking about. All right, here's a link to talk just about the GI, because again, we're using Redshift. It's not ZBrush rendering, it's Redshift rendering. So you got to go get the information from the Redshift documentation to find out what some of these sliders are doing. And we've just exposed these sliders now to you to have a little bit more control in 2023.0.1, which is now available to all 2023 users. All right, but I have found some other things that have become for me rather important. So let me see. Let me pull them up here. Okay, and I'm going to share these. This is the first one, which I know Ian's already shared.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love it.
So this is your IOR is one of the most important things, especially when you're dealing with metals. Okay, there is a particular type of index reflection that you need for materials. So this website is giving you the number that you need to put in the slider here in ZBrush to render it correctly, to make it look like realistic, like we see it when we're in the real world. Okay, so this is a very good resource, and it's got a lot of the major metals, liquids, and it's all, you know, organized by alphabetized by starting. What are you looking for? You're looking for gold, then you got to go to the G, and then you'll find the stuff that you're looking for. There's gold. So gold is, they're saying 0.470 is what you need. Okay, so this is extremely helpful for me. All right, but along my findings, I want to share a couple other things. This one was gold that I found. All right, this is super awesome in the sense you just pick, in essence, this is a website that gives us our refraction index info for materials. Okay, so you can grab like glass, let it update, and then it's got look at all these glass it has. There's so many like optical glasses, and like there's so many types of different glass here that we can look at, right? Display glass. And then what it does, it updates and gives you your IOR. And then that also has, if it has more types, it'll be in here, right? So you can go organic materials, right? So this website's been awesome for me in the sense, hey, I want to go start making my own Redshift materials, and I want to go maybe make some materials that weren't shipped with ZBrush or ones I can't find online anywhere or anything like that. Like I go make my own. right? That's what I wanted. Like, look, there's just oodles of materials here for us to choose from. Like, here's metals, plastics, glass. So go to plastic, and then now, what plastic do you want? Right? And then you click it, and then let the page update. I see sometimes I have to do a little bit of refresh, and it'll give you your refraction index here. And that's your IO. You don't want to guess. That's the number that if you want any type of this plastic, this website can give you there, 1.4906.
Yeah. Yeah, these websites are super helpful because, again, Redshift is a world-class realistic render engine. And so it's really going to be pulling from all this information. So instead of trying to figure out, does that kind of look like plastic or does that kind of look like metal? You can find out that information within a few minutes, and then you can just type those numbers in and you're good to go. And then just like any other material built in ZBrush, when you build something that you like or modify a material that ships with ZBrush, just save out that material, and then you don't have to worry about rebuilding that each time. It's only in the beginning where you're trying to find something new and custom that you'll spend the time building material. But once you build it, just save that out, and then you'll always have access to that.
Yeah, so this is one that I found extremely useful. I also found this website. It's a park community website for like parks. This has got a whole bunch of stuff on it. But what I loved about this, as an example, I wanted to make kind of like a gunmetal looking material. And I'm like, well, I don't know what my IOR of that is. And what also other things do I need to know about gunmetal? I found this website where one big thing that I like is telling me like what it's made of, mostly, right? So it's mostly made of copper. And then
we were geeking out on this.
This is right up Ian's world of being from aviation world.
Yeah, I love this stuff. I like knowing the little things and how stuff is made and what's in it. I know for me, it brings more depth to my models when I'm trying to make something, especially replicating something. I'm actually building a drum set in ZBrush, like an acoustic style drum set in ZBrush. So when I have the whole drum set, I'm going to start building the materials like the wood and the metals, and this information is going to come in super handy.
Okay, yeah, and what I like about this, if I scroll down, look, I'm getting the actual RGB value of gunmetal, or your hex, or like these are what we need in ZBrush. We need one of those two. So there is the gunmetal color. I don't have to guess it. They're giving it to me, and then they're also giving me all the other colors that I could use with gunmetal as well. That's what I liked about this website. I was getting my index information, and not only that, I was getting color information here.
Yep.
So this is, again, this is just me. This is a website that I've been finding that has been helping me try and making my own materials and doing this. So I just wanted to share it with you all in this stream. So these three have been super helpful for me getting this, and then this one's been amazing. So like there's aluminum, right? So you can get lead, mercury, silver, titanium. You can get the exact look, the infraction 1.7442. So back in here, if I wanted to go this route, this IOR needs to be changed. This needs to be 1.7442. It needs to be changed to that if I want to start going down that metal. Okay, so this there, I just put them in the chat for you. So obviously this is something Ian, myself, Daisuke, many of us at the team here are trying to make more materials for you all and figuring out. So ZBrush 2023.0.1, this patch also comes with 2 new materials, care of our main man here, Mr. Ian. So we got a vinyl. You got a new vinyl material. This was the one that was used in the last stream with Shane Olson, correct?
Yep, this was it.
Right, and then Ian also made a wax material for you all to start having a wax material. But Ian also has something else to show for you all. So I'm going to let Ian take control for a minute here and show you something else that he would like to share with you. So take it away, Ian, from the material.
Give it to me. Okay, so this is actually in correspondence to next week. So next week we have a Mr. Mike Thompson from the Stylist League. He's also a renowned artist of his own right with 2D and 3D implementation with each other. So he's going to be covering how he uses ZBrush with Redshift and talking about skin texture or subsurface scatter. And real quick, I just wanted to give a sneak preview of what that's like because we built a skin material that we're going to be sharing in one of our newsletters coming up. So if you're not subscribed to that newsletter, you'll definitely want to be so that you can get this material quickly. But as you can see here, I have earthquake here opened up real fast. And the key thing that I really want to focus on is taking a look at this model has Polypaint on it. So he has Polypaint on his face. He has Polypaint all over. And even he has like texturing happening through his body that gives him like those little dirts and scratches. So with this material alone, again, I'm just going to go ahead and I'll do a render region here just on his ear, just so you can kind of see it. But with this material, you're now able to really just get some really nice subsurface scatter quickly, but still retain that Polypaint information here on his face. So if we do a full render here, and this is where that error threshold comes into play too, because subsurface scatter now, that takes a little bit of time to render because it has to figure out how that light is bouncing around inside the body, and then of course how it's exiting out. So, but you can see here that really quickly we can get a decent render. So this is just a little sneak peek of next week's, because again, this is a 5-stream, technically 6-stream series every Wednesday that we're going to be showcasing something new with Redshift and covering certain topics. Like Paul covered, how to approach a more hard surface look with your renders. Next week, it's going to be about characters and specifically skin or subsurface scatter. So, and this took 35 seconds of render time, which is really, really quick. And that was just on the with the error threshold. All the default settings that ships with ZBrush is already like that. I just took the error threshold, which by default will be 0.01, which will give me a really clean render out the gate. But again, if I wanted to speed this up and get something a little bit quicker to see it, then I would just change this error threshold to like 0.1 or 0.2, which is what I had it. But here, I also like to, actually with that 0.1 real fast, what I like is there's a little bit of noise here, which is a great way to actually denoise your scene, is messing with that error threshold, because it's going to give it more samples to really play with. But what I do like with the 0.1 is that there's just a little bit of noise and it looks like slight imperfections on the skin, since all of our skins have little freckles and dots and stuff. So I really, really like that. But as a nutshell, that's just a little sneak peek. And again, we'll have a material jumping in a newsletter soon. That'll be our skin material that you guys can have access to. So just kind of wanted to showcase that. That's next week with Mike Thompson, aka he's also with the Stylist Leagues. You guys want to check them out.
Yeah, I think that, with the new version too, you guys also, the subsurface scattering has been even improved more.
Yes,
with this patch, especially with those who have been experimenting, you probably should get really beautiful results even more now with the changes that we've made for this patch.
Oh, 100%. Yep. And again, that's what the bug fix, the patch is fixing a lot of bugs and stuff. And then of course too, we have all these sliders now giving you more control as a user to get better, clean results faster. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this stream. Paul, it was amazing having you on, giving us some good tips and also dropping a patch. That's always fun. So thank you for popping on, and everybody who's joined, thank you guys so much. Always appreciate hanging out with you. And yeah, had a lot of fun.
Yeah, to the question that just popped up too. Yeah, it's not going to drain out the Polypaint in this patch. It's going to do a really good job of maintaining your Polypaint with your subsurface scattering. Yeah,
and something too, just a little tip for those who are currently playing and you've downloaded the patch. Just a little tip that I've noticed with my settings is with the subsurface scatter amount, I have that at about 0.85. You can throw that all the way up to 1. But what I've noticed too is the scale factor doesn't need to be so high. So I have mine set to 0.25. So if you want to try to replicate this material, then definitely I would say, yeah, start about 0.8, 0.85 on the amount. And then the scale factor, you can drop that down a little bit to like less than 1, like 0.225. And then I always add a little bit of coat sheen on my skin material, because skin has a little bit of shine and reflective, but the sheen I use more for like plastics and metals, where the coat I feel like gives a better representation of what the shine on skin texture would look like.
Sheen's good for fabrics. That's really what its driving force is for fabrics, like a silk or something like that.
And then something I learned about subsurface scatter, so just a little geeking out for a second. 1.5 IOR is for healthy hydrated skin. 1.35 is for dehydrated skin. So if you got some zombies out there, maybe drop the index of refraction down to like a 1.3. That's just something fun. I was like, I wouldn't even have thought of that until now.
Right.
So
yeah. Yeah.
right.
So the last thing that is obviously I want to share, taking everything we've been talking about. This is obviously the render we were using to showcase the fact that this is me. I'm in the middle of making this be my own personal collectible that I sculpted this all in ZBrush. And I wanted to see what would this collectible look like. So my goal was making it look like plastic, making the glass look like glass, making the light. I'm going to have a light and missing from that. Yeah, and the last thing I forgot to say that I found that I think is very useful for those that really want to get involved with this and do some emissive with hard surface things. The one tip I will give, so like all we've been talking about is all in this one render in essence. I'm finding my materials, I'm finding the right IORs, I'm getting the emissive the way I want it, I'm getting the where I want my global illumination to get my final product so I can see, hey, here's my collectible that I'm making. One thing that I have found that's really cool to do with emissives actually is, let me reload that emissive project that I've made again. Here is this. Let me load this. One thing I found. Okay, so this is, I'm going to render this off right now real quick to just give the initial render of this so we can see what this bubblegum emissive. Bubblegum emissive.
It has that like candy apple little shine to it. In fact, what you have on right now is kind of reminiscent a little bit. I know it's not emissive, but it has that nice shine on this Iron Man.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it looks cool.
Looks cool. All right. So, like you're saying, right? I kind of think about this. Obviously, there's one thing that sometimes can come in really handy depending on what you're doing. Obviously, if something's emissive, it's usually obviously because there's lights, right? And usually those lights in most cases are inside something else. So I would not, percentagely, I don't just do this when I do emissive. I tend to add another mesh like this. And then this is a mesh that's sitting outside the sphere that's bigger than the sphere, and it's glass. And for me, this will add so much more realism to your render with the emissive. Because then you're also getting refractions from the glass too. And it just adds a little bit more element to it. Then there's obviously the glass has different reflectivity to it than maybe the emissive ball that's inside there. I find doing this, especially in hard surface where it's usually like a light or it's usually like an eye of a character or maybe some kind of sword. Obviously, it doesn't make any sense to put glass on the sword. But it's just something extra. Think about it in this sense, right? What can you experiment to get this, right? So then there's the render with the glass and then without the glass. For me, I just like, and then even me, I would probably even knock this down a little bit and almost make it touch, just barely touch. Like even, what does that look like? Right?
Yeah.
And then
I've played with double
threshold. I'm going to crank it up this time because I just want to see what it looks like. Go for it, Ian.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I've played with double-sided geometry too, and you get a slightly different effect if your glass has two sides to it versus one, because now that's more surface area for that light to actually interact. So you get a different result if you have single-sided geometry versus double-sided geometry. And if you think about like you're saying, like a light bulb, technically the glass that is surrounding the electrical components is double-sided. So you may even want to try that. Take your mesh, double-side it, and see what kind of differences you make. Also, too, just eyes. Eyes now can get really in depth because of the way the eye is, constructed. And now you can build like a shell around your eye with the iris. There's so many cool things.
Yeah, this is emitting light. The person that's asking, this is emitting. All the color I'm getting on these two panels, there's no information on these two panels. All this purple is coming from this pink.
Can you turn off your HDR? That'll really show it.
Yeah.
Do you have an HDR on?
I'm just using the standard. I'm using the default. That is always on. There's always an HDR on inside of ZBrush for Redshift. So this is a default HDR that we're always pulling from. So I've turned it off. And so now it's just using the emissive. So this is giving you light from the sphere, which sometimes I'll put planes and spheres and use that to light my scene as well. to add just another action, another nice little light. And that way I have full control of the piece of geometry to do stuff as well. And as far as your perpetual question, if you're doing a perpetual upgrade, you get the Redshift bridge, in essence, the linking of all this that we're doing with ZBrush and Redshift. But in order to get the Redshift to render, you'll need a subscription to Redshift if you're doing the perpetual upgrade. However, you guys are also should be aware of currently right now, the subscription to 1 year ZBrush has a 25% coupon, and the Maxon 1 subscription has a 45% coupon. So for your first subscription to either one of those, you're getting which one you choose from. When it goes back to being, obviously the next cycle, it'll go to the regular price. But right now we're doing a promotion for you all.
Yep. And for all of you students and teachers, I really want to emphasize that last part, students and teachers. I'm going to share a link right now, but you can get all of Maxon 1 for just a few bucks every 6 months. So I dropped the link. So if you're a teacher at a university or accredited EDU, or you're a student at accredited EDU or university of such, check that out too, because it's the whole suite. So that means you get everything. You get ZBrush, you get Redshift, and then on top of it, you get Cinema 4D and all the other stuff as well, Red Giants and Universe. So you get everything for just a very little amount of. It's just like a few bucks. It's really not that expensive. Definitely check that out as well. So again, students and teachers. So if you're watching this and you're very interested in trying this out, go ahead and click that link as well. But like Paul said, yeah, if you're a perpetual user, you will need the Redshift subscription. But we like to emphasize that Redshift subscription works on any DCC that accepts Redshift, and there's a lot out there. So definitely, if you're using that subscription, don't think of it as okay, I'm just only going to use that in ZBrush. You can use it everywhere. So Blender users, Cinema 4D users, Maya users, Houdini, really want to emphasize that, because that subscription works across the board. It's just you'll only be able to use your subscription in one application at a time. You can't have all 6 open up and then rendering at the same time. But it will be cross-compatible for all those as well. So, and we have a lot of training. We just did a Demystify series of Redshift for all of the DCCs that accept Redshift on the Maxon YouTube channel as well. So the education side, we're putting these together so that there's more knowledge, since this has just been released over the last month. So I'll share a link to that information as well, so that you have more resource to really dive in and check it out. So let me go ahead and share a link for that. But that's why we're doing these streams, guys, because we want to make sure that everybody has access to this. So definitely check that out.
To the question where to get the promotional, you can either reach out to us or one of our sales teams people, but you're going to be getting an email if you are a perpetual licenser of ZBrush, past ZBrush user. You should be getting an email with a coupon code, as long as you were a ZBrush user that had a license when we were Pixelogic. Right, and then there's the double what Ian said he likes to do. That's what it looks like with the double thickness for glass.
Yeah,
I think it just add it. I like it. It adds just another element to what we're doing.
Yep, it's awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. It's been awesome. I've had a great time. Paul, thanks for joining as always. You were missed. People loved you.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been always a pleasure. Hopefully people took away some stuff from that and enjoyed it. And we're always here. So any questions, feel free to reach out to us on our support as well. If you have questions about anything like that, we'll be happy to help in any way that we can. And if you want the whole breakdown of what's been added to the patch that's now available to you, because it is available, I'm going to put that link one more time. You can see what changes have been done with the fixes in ZBrush 2023.0.1.
Yeah, and if you guys are, if you're not sure if you got the email, check your spam or junk folder as well, because sometimes my email sends a bunch of stuff to spam or junk. But you can always reach out as well to the sales team, and we can get you that info as soon as possible.
And then Painted Dragon, there are subscriptions just for every piece of software individually. So you can take advantage of that. All right. Well, I'm done. Thanks. This has been great. Have a delicious day, as I say. And don't forget, next week, we'll see you again.
Yep. See you next week, guys. Bye.